All right, man. we're gonna react to this. Will most likely cause Karmelo Anthony to fatally stab Austin Metcalf. Here we go.
On a bright April morning in 2025, a high school track meet in Frisco, Texas turned into a scene of tragedy. Two 17-year-old students, Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony.
Wait. Why they got his... this is definitely a lineup picture. Like where... it's a mug shot. I get everything that happened. But like, why they couldn't put up his school picture? Alright.
Crossed paths under a team tent at the district meet. An argument over a seating spot erupted, and within seconds it escalated into a fatal confrontation. By the end of that morning, Austin lay mortally wounded from a stab wound to the chest, and Karmelo was in police custody, accused of murder. This true crime story isn't about hardened criminals, but about two teenagers and a split-second decision that ended one life and forever altered another. What happened that day at the track, and how did a routine school event descend into violence? Welcome to Bad Things. This episode will examine the incident with a measured, factual approach and try to determine the most likely cause to why Karmelo Anthony killed Austin Metcalf. Background: Austin Metcalf. Austin was a 17-year-old junior at Frisco Memorial High School and a talented multi-sport athlete. Known as an honor student with a 4.0 GPA, he was recently voted his football team's most valuable player. At 6 feet tall and a star linebacker, Austin dreamed of playing college football and had drawn interest from schools for his athletic and
I hope they go to the same thing for the other kid.
Academic prowess. He was also a member of the school's track and field team, competing at the meet that day. Beyond statistics, friends and family remembered Austin as a bright young man with a great future ahead of him. A leader of men, whose smile could light up the room, in the words of his father, Jeff. Austin had a twin brother, Hunter, who was equally close to him. The pair were inseparable, having been born only 2 minutes apart. Together, the Metcalf brothers shared a bond through sports and family. They had even gone on a hunting trip with their dad the weekend before the tragedy, making memories that would become all the more precious after that fateful day. Karmelo Anthony. Karmelo, no relation to the NBA player of a similar name, is also 17 and was a student athlete attending Frisco Centennial High School. Like Austin, he was active in sports. In fact, Karmelo played as a free safety on his school's football team and was said to have received some interest from colleges, mostly Division III, for his athletic talents. Academically, family members describe Karmelo as an A student, 3.7 GPA, who even juggled 2 part-time jobs, painting a picture of a hard-working kid. Those who know him assert that he's not what they're making him out to be in media narratives, and that he had never met Austin prior to the day of the incident. Karmelo's family has emphasized their faith and requested compassion, expressing sympathy for Austin's family, while also defending Karmelo's character. Everyone has already made their assumptions about my son, but he was not the aggressor, one of Karmelo's parents told the reporter, stressing that this tragedy has devastated both families. It's clear that in many ways, Karmelo was a typical high schooler with college aspirations, now thrust into a very untypical and grim situation. The backdrop for this incident was a UIL District 11-5A championship track meet at Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco. The meet brought together athletes from multiple high schools in the area. Each school's team had its own area or tent on the sidelines for students to gather between events. It was around 10 a.m. on April 2nd, 2025, a Wednesday, when crowds of teenagers, coaches, and some parents were present to compete and cheer. The atmosphere, initially filled with the usual excitement and nerves of a scholastic sports event, would soon turn chaotic and horrifying. Importantly, Austin and Karmelo came from different schools. Memorial
Bro, he doesn't have a school picture? This is crazy.
And by all accounts, did not know each other personally before that day. They only converged by chance because Karmelo was in or near the tent designated for Austin's team, setting the stage for the confrontation. No one present could have imagined that a minor turf disagreement in the middle of a friendly track meet would escalate to lethal violence. Timeline of the day's events. Morning of April 2nd, 2025. The track meet begins. Students arrive at Kuykendall Stadium early for the district track meet. Austin, accompanied by his twin brother Hunter and fellow Memorial High teammates, set up under the Memorial team's tent on the field. Karmelo was present with Centennial High's track contingent, wearing a Centennial tracksuit according to witnesses. Sometime around mid-morning, possibly close to 10 a.m., Karmelo ended up under or near the Memorial team's tent, seeking shade or a place to sit. This did not go unnoticed. Witnesses recall that members of the Memorial team, including Austin and Hunter, questioned why Karmelo was in their area instead of his own school's section. "Who are you?" someone asked. Karmelo replied, "I'm Mello," using his nickname. The Memorial students then told him, in essence, that you're in the wrong spot. You need to go sit with your team, as Austin's father later explained. What began as a simple request for Karmelo to move to his school's area soon escalated into an argument. Confrontation under the tent. Rather than moving away immediately, Karmelo responded confrontationally. According to a probable cause affidavit compiled from multiple eyewitnesses, Austin asked Karmelo to move from under the Memorial tent, and in response Karmelo reached into his backpack and issued a warning. "Touch me and see what happens." Those words, chilling in hindsight, indicated that Karmelo was prepared to...
Okay. Why would he say, "touch me and see what happens," if somebody didn't say, "I'm about to touch you if you don't get up out that"? Okay? First flaw.
Retaliate if anyone put hands on him. At that moment, tension spiked among the small group of teens. Austin, described as a natural leader, likely felt responsible for maintaining his team's space and enforcing the request. He physically touched or tapped Karmelo, perhaps to guide him out of the tent or assertively signal that he needed to leave. Karmelo did not back down. Instead, he allegedly challenged Austin further, effectively daring him. He told Austin to punch him and see what happens next. The situation was spiraling rapidly from verbal to physical. In the next moments, Austin moved as if to forcibly push or escort Karmelo away from the tent area when suddenly Karmelo pulled out a knife from his backpack.
Damn.
A 30-second struggle turns deadly. What ensued was brief and tragic.
See, now that's the
Multiple
part where
witnesses
it's not.
reported that within seconds of the initial contact, Karmelo lunged with the knife and stabbed Austin in the chest. The entire altercation, from the first words to the stabbing, lasted less than 30 seconds, according to the affidavit, and this version of events was corroborated by several eyewitnesses on the field. Coaches and students nearby watched in shock as Austin staggered after the single devastating blow. The knife had pierced his heart, according to later statements by his father. Karmelo then fled a short distance from the tent amidst the commotion, dropping or concealing the knife as people began to realize what had happened. At approximately 10 a.m., 911 calls summoned police and paramedics to an incident at the stadium.
That means he just can't fight no more, man.
Immediate aftermath. Help arrives. Coaches from various schools, athletic trainers, and bystanders rush to Austin's aid within moments. Several Frisco ISD coaches encircled Austin as he collapsed, and trainers began CPR and other life-saving measures to try to stem the bleeding. In a heart-wrenching scene, Austin's twin brother Hunter was at his side. Hunter witnessed the attack and immediately pressed his hands over Austin's wound, desperately attempting to stop the bleeding. As Hunter cradled his brother, Austin gasped for help and then went still. According to the family, Austin grabbed his chest and fell into Hunter's arms, losing consciousness within seconds. Hunter later recalled through tears, "I looked at my brother and I tried to help him, but there was only so much a teenager could do in that moment." In those frightening minutes, the track meet came to an abrupt halt as students and teachers realized A terrible violence had occurred. Some stood shocked, others screamed or ran to find help. Police encounter with Karmelo. Frisco police officers arrived on the scene swiftly after the emergency calls. They found chaos on the field. A gravely injured student being tended to, and many distraught witnesses. Officers quickly located Karmelo, who had distanced himself from the immediate area of the stabbing, but had not left the stadium. A witness had pointed out a bloodied knife on the ground, which police secured as evidence, covering it with a tarp. Officers confronted Karmelo at gunpoint, ordering him to put his hands up. At that point, Karmelo did not resist arrest. In fact, as the first officer approached him, Karmelo shouted a startling phrase, "I was protecting myself." This was his spontaneous claim that he had acted in self-defense. The officer carefully took Karmelo into custody, and while doing so referred to him as an alleged suspect in the stabbing. In response, Karmelo apparently blurted out a confession. "I'm not alleged, I did it," he said, according to the police affidavit. The exchange was brief but telling, as Karmelo both admitted to the stabbing and attempted to justify it in the same breath. As officers escorted him off the field, Karmelo became emotional. He reportedly continued to defend his actions, saying, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." At one point, Karmelo even asked police, could this be considered self-defense? These words, later documented in the affidavit, show that mere minutes after the incident, the 17-year-old was already grappling with the reality of what he had done and the possible justification for it. Meanwhile, paramedics rushed Austin to a local hospital. Hunter and other family members followed behind, praying for a miracle. But despite advanced medical interventions, including CPR en route and even the administration of blood by first responders at the scene, Austin could not be saved. He was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital, a fact that would send waves of grief through the community.
Damn, bro.
Theories. What led to the stabbing? Investigators and the community have worked to understand why this altercation turned deadly.
Yeah,
so
what
quickly.
happened? What
Several
really happened?
theories and perspectives have emerged based on witness statements, the suspect's account, and broader discussions in the aftermath. We will explore these interpretations, keeping them within the bounds of known evidence, and try avoiding unwarranted speculation. Theory 1. Self-defense in a sudden fight. This is the narrative Karmelo Anthony himself put forward from the moment he was apprehended. According to this theory, Karmelo felt threatened and acted to protect himself. Supporters of this view point out that Karmelo was outnumbered, being in another team's area, when confronted by Austin and possibly other memorial athletes. It's alleged that Austin initiated physical contact. He put his hands on Karmelo after Karmelo refused to move. Karmelo's family and attorney argue that he did not go to the meet intending to harm anyone, but was sitting quietly until approached, and that he drew his knife only when he feared he might be jumped or attacked by larger players. The fact that Austin did touch or grab Karmelo is not in dispute. By Karmelo's account, this was a trigger that made him believe he had to defend himself. His lawyer, Derek Walpole, speaking the next day, noted, "My client said it was self-defense. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that. I don't have any reason to think it wasn't self-defense at this time." Under this theory, the knife was used as a defensive reaction to a perceived assault. Karmelo's split-second decision to swing the blade could have been driven by panic or reflex, without intent to kill, but rather to stop the person he felt.
That's honestly, it's very crazy they don't use this one because Buddy ass got a perm, but they used the one where he got dreads. But I guess
was attacking him. Those sympathetic to Karmelo also highlight his clean record and good standing as a student. They suggest that something must have genuinely scared him in that moment for him to resort to violence. This perspective does not claim that the outcome was justified, but posits that Karmelo believed he was in danger of serious harm when he struck Austin with the knife. Theory 2. An overreaction, aggressor scenario. Another perspective, shared by many witnesses and by Austin's family, is that Karmelo was the primary aggressor and grossly overreacted to a routine request. In this view, the confrontation should have remained a minor annoyance, a brief verbal dispute at worst, but escalated only because Karmelo chose to introduce a deadly weapon almost immediately. Multiple eyewitnesses attested that Karmelo issued provocative challenges, touch me and see what happens, punch me and see what happens, and was the first to brandish a weapon, even though Austin was unarmed and much of the interaction was verbal up to that point. The presence of a knife at a school event is itself seen as a red flag. He brought a knife to a track meet, Austin's father said in disbelief, emphasizing that Karmelo had armed himself at a place where weapons had no reason to be. According to this theory, Austin's actions were not intended as an attack, but as an attempt to enforce rules, asking someone to leave the team's tent, or at most a shove to remove an intruder from their area. That does not equate to a life-threatening scenario, and thus pulling a knife and stabbing was a drastic and unjustified response. In fact, some witnesses imply Karmelo might have come into the tent already agitated or looking for trouble, since he didn't simply apologize or move when first asked. It's possible he interpreted the situation as an affront to his pride and reacted with anger rather than fear. Investigators noted that after the stabbing, Karmelo did not flee the premises entirely. Instead, he essentially admitted to the act, which could indicate he wasn't trying to get away with a crime, but perhaps felt somehow justified. However, critics of the self-defense claim argue that because Karmelo had time to utter warnings and challenges, he had time to choose a non-violent path, but didn't. Self-defense under the law generally requires an imminent threat to one's life. Being pushed or even punched in a scuffle at a school event would not typically justify lethal force. Therefore, this interpretation frames the incident as a tragic overreaction by Karmelo, a moment where teenage impulsivity and the presence of a knife turned a scuffle into a homicide. Theory 3. A tragic misunderstanding and failure of conflict de-escalation. A more nuanced theory doesn't place 100% of the blame on either teen, but looks at the event as a convergence of unfortunate factors and miscommunication. Both Austin and Karmelo may have felt disrespected in that moment. Austin possibly felt Karmelo was flouting team boundaries or ignoring his request, while Karmelo felt singled out and provoked when multiple people confronted him. Neither intended a deadly outcome, but neither backed down. Psychologists note that teenage boys, especially athletes in a competitive environment, can experience adrenaline-fueled reactions to perceived slights. Here, there was no cooling-off period. The confrontation went from 0 to 100 almost instantly. One can theorize that if any adult or coach had noticed and intervened at the first sign of argument, the stabbing might have been prevented. Unfortunately,
where the coaches at?
Realized something.
Where the parents?
The knife had already struck. The Frisco police chief later warned the public about rampant misinformation, hate, fear, and division swirling on social media about the case, urging people not to buy into false narratives. Some of those online narratives may have tried to cast the incident in racial or gang terms without evidence, or to blame the school district's security policies. In reality, there is no indication this was anything but a sudden personal dispute. Both teens involved were accomplished students, not known troublemakers. This theory sees the tragedy as a failure of conflict resolution, a clash of two youths when pride, poor communication, and the presence of a weapon led to a nightmare outcome. It's a reminder that a single rash decision, bringing a knife to school or laying hands on someone in anger, can have irreversible consequences. As one observer put it, this was an unimaginable sequence where everything that could go wrong did, in the span of half a minute, turning what should have been a day of friendly competition into one of unspeakable loss. It's important to note that all of these theories remain subject to the ongoing investigation and legal process. Police and prosecutors will piece together the evidence to determine if this was legally self-defense or murder. Texas law on self-defense will scrutinize whether Karmelo had a reasonable fear for his life or of serious bodily harm at the time he used the knife. The early indicators, witness testimony, and the nature of the provocation seem to challenge the self-defense claim, but ultimately a court or jury may have to decide which narrative they believe.
Damn, bro.
There is little doubt about the basic chain of events. Investigators have a consistent story from multiple eyewitnesses that align with physical evidence and even much of Karmelo's own account, minus his interpretation of fear. We think the most credible reason is that Karmelo acted aggressively under a misguided notion of self-defense. He did feel provoked, that much is evident, but the provocation was a normal physical jostling that happens in countless schoolyard disagreements without anyone ending up dead. Unfortunately, because a knife was introduced, the outcome became deadly in an instant. There is no evidence that Austin threw punches or that a group attacked Karmelo. In fact, one witness specifically said multiple eyewitnesses backed up this version of events, where Austin was basically trying to move Karmelo out and not actually harming him beyond that initial push. Austin was unarmed and had no reason to anticipate lethal danger in that scenario. Karmelo's own words, could this be self-defense, hint that even he wasn't entirely sure he had done the right thing. If he truly believed he was about to be seriously hurt, he might not have expressed such uncertainty afterwards. Legally and logically, the likely scenario is that Karmelo will be held responsible for overreacting and using deadly force without sufficient justification. The charge of murder indicates authorities believe Karmelo's actions went beyond any reasonable self-defense. Texas is a state that allows self-defense claims, but only when the force is proportional to the threat. Here, a fatal stab in response to an attempt to push someone out of a tent is unlikely to meet that threshold.
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
All signs point to this being a spontaneous act of violence, not premeditated, but certainly not blameless. It was a convergence of two teams' tempers flaring, with one of them tragically pulling a knife at the peak of the confrontation. As a result, Austin Metcalf lost his life on what should have been an ordinary day at a track meet, and Karmelo Anthony will likely face grave legal consequences for that loss of life. In summary, what most likely happened is the simplest explanation. A momentary clash escalated because neither party backed down, and one had a weapon. It's a sobering scenario
Use your words,
of how
ladies and
quickly
gentlemen.
youth and anger can combine to undo futures. Austin's promising future was cut short, and Karmelo's future is now irreversibly altered as well. All over a...
Use your words so you can live to fight another day, bro. It's not that serious, bro. Nothing is ever that serious. I promise. Excuse me. I promise. Because, look, he lost his life, and old dude about to fuck his life up. Fucking sad, bro.
A dispute that lasted less than half a minute.
Damn. Alright. If you made it this far, go ahead and drop a 7 into the comments so I know that you made it this far. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe and share so you can help the channel grow. If you like that one, you'll probably like this one or this one down here. Go ahead and click on either or both of them, and I'll see you in both of the videos. Smooches.
We gon' leave here what we came with. Nintendo 64, we ain't switching on the same shit. Unpacks on the track, sound like I'm speaking Spanglish. Send my jeans, and I promise ain't no Wranglers. 19 on me like I Georgia swap with Debo.